Hello, this is Natives Helping Natives, and I'm Harry MacArthur, and I have Bob Thornton here, and I have a very, very special guest today, George Conrades, and I just think the world of this man, and he's just such a special person for business and everything and friendship, and he's the one that told me to start this podcast, which I took a long time to do. And I should have done it faster if I would have listened to him. But I'm not the smartest. But thank you, George, for coming. I just would love to hear more of your story. I know enough about you over the years, and I just want to hear more of you. So this is kind of a selfish thing on my behalf because I want to know more about you.
Well, thank you, Harry. I didn't mean I would be on your podcast. I just thought this was a good idea to have a podcast that interested people in Harry and the Natives. You have the most iconic restaurant in the region, really a symbol of South Florida. So it's great to be here.
Well, George, I would love if you could share with us, maybe start way back at the beginning of your childhood. What was it like at home? How were you in school? And kind of start us off on your journey, siblings.
Well, I was raised in Poland, Ohio, which is a suburb of Youngstown, Steel City then, of what I would call middle-class parents. My father worked for himself, and my mom did his accounting. And so I learned a lot about entrepreneurship from that. And I was a child, really, high school in the 50s, fell in love with things that move, motorcycles, hot rods, airplanes, trains, whatever. So when I went to college, I majored in physics and math because of things that move. But physics then was friction. It wasn't nuclear, and it wasn't some of the more advanced forms, quantum mechanics, that it is today. But it was friction, things that move. So I've always had a lifelong interest in mechanical things. And so after going to college at Ohio Wesleyan, great experience. I was introduced to the computer by the mathematics professor, who said, I want to teach you about computers. It's the new thing. This was 1958. And I learned to program on a vacuum tube IBM 650 computer. And Nationwide Insurance down the road in Columbus, Ohio, had one. And so we would write code in class and then take it down in the evenings and run it on the computer. And it was punch cards in, do some compute, and punch cards out. But I fell in love with it. I was also interested in rock and roll music because at that time, rock and roll just burst on to the music scene. I mean, if today you can simulate that by going to the 40s on Sirius XM and listen to Guy Lombardo, and then go to the 50s and listen to bebop or Little Richard, and you can see the difference. And it was quite a dramatic change. So I fell in love with rock and roll, learned how to play the drums back in high school, and wanted to be a rock drummer when I graduated from college.
And you're still a great drummer.
Oh, well, that was that performance.
Yes, well, you still are. I've seen it, so.
Harry had Delbert McClinton. Well, I did for an 80th birthday 6 years ago. Anyway, we had Delbert, and since we had paid for it, he let me sit in, and that ended up being 3 or 4 songs. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
But in any event, I wanted to be a rock drummer, and the head of the physics department and the head of the math department said, no, you're not. Here are 7 or 8 names of these new computer companies: Burroughs, Univac, NCR, Honeywell, and a couple others, and IBM. And you should go interview with them and go into technical sales. So I did, and IBM caught my fancy, and I joined them right after college and was there for 31 years.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of my high-tech career, kind of rode the wave of the transistorized business computer through all those decades, and enjoyed it very much, and then retired in 92 and then ended up in Boston running two companies. One of them a very high-tech research firm called Bolt, Beranek and Newman, and then joined a venture capital company. And along came almost right away these two geniuses from MIT who had a great idea about how to improve the performance of the internet, make it more reliable, secure, and fast. And so that was called, we didn't have a name for it then, but I realized that what they had was really important because that was in 1998. And back then, the internet was slow. It was still research and academic. And these guys had a mathematical way to make it more reliable, faster, more secure. And it needed it because business was beginning to turn to the internet in the late 90s and was straining the internet. And that was the basis for forming Akamai Technologies. So 27 years ago, I helped invest in that company, helped get it. I was the first CEO for 6 years, and we got it off the ground. It's been a very successful company. That's it. That's the whole. That's the whole.
That's not the whole thing. Because
didn't you're still with them, aren't you? Don't you still do?
I'm with. I was the chairman for 18 years, and then I retired from that. And I've become what we call an executive advisor, and that just means mentoring senior management and also being a cheerleader for the company. And that's why I wrote that book with some help on being a leader, which was the idea is to try to capture a culture where everyone should act like a leader. And if you do that, it's not about your title, it's about your intent and your actions. If you have everybody rowing in the same direction and working together harmoniously and acting like a leader, then you really got a good thing going.
That's one of the things that I've seen in successful companies is they try to get everyone to have that ownership mentality.
Right.
That what you do does make a difference. And, if this group of us in here were a team and you might come in and say, what's one small thing we can do today to improve our structure? And Seth is the newest guy on the team, and he might come up with the greatest idea that we hadn't thought of before. I think it's amazing that you started learning computers in 1958.
Yeah, I learned to program before most of the people I talked to were born, including these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you witnessed really the birth of the computers.
Yeah.
You witnessed the graduation from grade school, grammar school, to middle school, to high school, to college, the birth of the internet. And I had the good fortune to be a financial advisor as a stockbroker for UBS, which was, I'm so old, it was Payne, Weber, Jackson, Curtis when I started.
Yeah.
And don't be impressed, I was in the bowels of the basement in a cubicle making cold calls, and I read a pamphlet from a young analyst who talked all about this word that I had never heard, and it was the internet. And I read this thing, and I didn't understand it because I'm not as smart as you, George. But what I did understand, I had the common sense to know that things would never be the same. It would change the very fiber of who we are. So being inquisitive, I called someone like you, this analyst, and he tried to explain it to me, which was like trying to teach a dog Spanish. It just wasn't going to happen. And I said, well, the thing that intrigued me is you have a typo in your article. And he was new, so he was excited that somebody actually read his research and called him. And
right.
I knew he was new because he answered his own phone, just like I answered my own phone, and we became friends. But he said, well, what's the typo? And I said, well, you said in here you expect returns between 8 and 10,000%. And I know historically the stock market returns 8.4% every 10-year period of time since the markets began. And he said, Bob, that's not a typo. They wouldn't let me put in what I really think. And I said, well, how can I get involved? Because I didn't know anything about the names or the technology. And he gave me a list of names, companies that we had never heard of, that you probably have worked with. And I just built baskets of stocks for school teachers and gym teachers, and they became multimillionaires. And I was in the bowels of the basement with 2 little kids, so I didn't have any money to invest, but I made a lot of people a lot of money. How was that for you going through the computers? It had to be a challenge and exciting to have to, you must have constantly had to learn.
Well, that's true. You do have to have a learning mentality. I think one of the things one should look for is the next big thing. I was fortunate after leaving IBM after those 31 years to become the chairman CEO of Bolt, Brannick & Newman, this high-tech research firm out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And their history was in acoustics and a lot of computerization, mathematics, including helping with the, in 1969, this ARPA project to build the first 4 nodes of what eventually became the internet, the ARPANET. And I wouldn't have known anything about the internet had I not been at Bolt, Brannick & Newman. At IBM, it was all about the computer, the processor, and the software, but not about the communications, really, not about the network, not about the global possibilities of the internet. And at BBN, they were doing a lot of work for the government in using internet technology. So I learned a lot about that. And so after 4 or 5 years, we built at BBN one of the early internet service providers, ISPs. We called it BBN Planet. We were number 3 behind UUNet, PSINet. UUNet with Bernie Ebbers, you mentioned him earlier in our private conversation. He tried to buy us, but GTE ended up buying us. So I was free then to join this venture firm. And when the professor and the graduate student from MIT came by and had this way to speed up the internet, I was able to recognize that was a big idea. It wasn't after the 4 or 5 years at BBN. That wasn't a foreign thought to me. It would have been had I gone directly from IBM. I wouldn't have really understood what they were talking about at the point you were on in the question. So I think it's kind of important to recognize the next big thing. Certainly the introduction of the iPhone in 2007 was another big thing because it connected unbelievable compute power in your pocket to the internet. And we all know what's happened to that, including social media and so forth. But today, and in the process of building companies like that, you learn a lot about artificial intelligence. It's been around for 50-some years, machine learning and so forth. And Akamai has long used machine learning to perfect its algorithms to make the internet faster, more reliable, and secure. So I knew something about AI, but all of a sudden when compute power, as it has become in the last 5 years, become so important, and data has become so much more important, lots of data and lots of compute power, then you have the possibilities for artificial intelligence. So my take would be, if I were a young person looking today, you wouldn't be looking for mainframes, and you wouldn't be looking necessarily for the internet or even the iPhone, but you'd be looking for, well, what can we do in artificial intelligence? And related to it would be robotics.
Now, with what you've seen through your life, and first of all, you're 86 years old, and you're still working and you're still learning.
Oh, yeah.
Which my dad passed. He was 97. He passed in December, but he worked for Teledyne. He was tool and die maker extraordinaire until he was 93 years old.
Yeah.
And the only reason he's probably not there still working is during COVID, they closed down the plant. And unfortunately, my dad my mom had been gone for 14 years. And so he lived for his work. And he didn't stay sharp. You obviously are still firing on all cylinders. I'd really like to have you kind of, if you could look into your crystal ball with AI, because there's so much talk about it, and I've always been fascinated. And in my crude Neanderthal experience, I knew that the problem, or the way that I understood the problem they were having with AI, was they couldn't teach AI to think the way that we learn deep thinking. And 5 years ago, maybe, or 6 years ago, I read an article and it said that they had kind of cracked that code and they were able to start having AI learn more like we learn, and at obviously a vastly accelerated pace. Well, there's a lot of concern that everyone's not going to have a job, and we're going to go to Arnold Schwarzenegger's futuristic, and the robots the AI is going to kill us all, and maybe that's good. But what do you foresee going forward with AI, and how it will impact us?
I think it's difficult to tell that right now, because the forecasts of it being 10, 15 years out to the point that artificial intelligence really begins to replace people is happening at such an accelerated rate that it's happening today. And what you see, if you just look at around and say, well, what's happening with it, you see that most companies, for example, have processes. And now AI has software kernels called agents. And the agents do what a person does in their tasks at work. If you apply to a company, the agent will read their resume. The next agent will compare it to the job requirement. The next agent will say, I'm going to do a background check on this person. And you just keep it up. And that's what an HR professional does. Well, we don't need that person doing that anymore. And then they'll respond to the applicant and say, we're interested in you or we're not. And they'll compare that application to other applicants and decide which one of them they'll invite for the first interview. My advice would be, in the short run, what this young man over here is doing, be a plumber, be an electrician. That'll be a while before that's replaced by a humanoid, which Musk and others are working on, which is fascinating in itself. But robots, I think, are a big deal. That's all about AI. They wouldn't function if they weren't absorbing data information from sensors and from cameras and so forth. That's all a Tesla is, a robot. So I would say, maybe learn bartending skills. Or be Harry, run Harry and the natives. No, seriously. So AI is not going to replace the atmosphere, the aura of Harry and the natives, and a place to come and enjoy a beer and French fries and hot dogs and so forth on a Friday night, like you can have in South Florida at Harry and the natives. That's not coming for a while, but and I don't think Harry's going to get replaced anytime soon, even though some people probably think you should. But no, seriously. But these jobs that are process-oriented jobs are going to be the first ones to go, and in many ways they're white-collar jobs. They're lower echelon, but I know companies right now that are thinking through what positions and how many of these positions do we need going forward if we assume that artificial intelligence software is doing a number of these tasks that we have entrusted to hundreds of employees. And they'll stop hiring, they'll slow down hiring, they'll let people go, they'll take them off the bottom of the stack first, which you should be doing anyway, get the wrong people off the bus and so forth. But they'll start doing that with an eye to what the future of the organization looks like if things like artificial intelligence has taken over a great number of the tasks. And that's a little scary. And people say, well, there'll be other jobs. And that's true. Almost all new technologies that are better and faster and cheaper create new jobs. But I think that if you want to be part of that, one thing you should do today, everybody, is you better be on ChatGPT, you better be on Grok, you better be on all these artificial intelligence engines and learning all about it and using it in your day-to-day so you become very facile with it. Otherwise, it's going to rush over you like a train. If you're sitting there and I say this to audience, to groups, not audiences so much, but groups who are peers of mine age-wise, I said, you guys replace Google? They said, what do you mean? Do you use Google? Yeah, I use Google sometimes. Are you replacing it with ChatGPT? No. What do you mean? I said, oh, you better get started and then the thing that's tricky about it is the prompt, which is in essence the question. What questions are you asking? How curious are you? And don't think the computer can't deal with this. It can. Ask an arcane question. Just do it and key it in and get blown away by what comes back. And all of a sudden you're going to say, oh my gosh. And what I'm leading to with that is that if you're displaced because your job was more of a rote function, but you have learned a lot more about artificial intelligence, you become more of an expert in that, and you can be more of a team player with artificial intelligence because you understand what it's doing, what it's trying to do. You have a hint about where you think it's going, and you can help an organization with the implementation and the use of artificial intelligence. But if you don't have that background today as a young person, I think you're making a big mistake. Or go take bartending lessons. Everybody's going to still want to drink at the bar, and they're not going to be so interested in the humanoid that comes up and gives you one because it's not a pretty girl. So there you go. That's my statement for the day.
Well, one of the things I would love for you to consider, because you are a student and you have acquired so much, is it would be great if you gave thought to putting together kind of a hitchhiker's guide to artificial intelligence, or something that I could give to Seth, or I have the great privilege of mentoring so many young minds, and it's something I would love to be able to say when I go into these schools and I get to talk. Here's a guy who's lived through so many revolutions, right? So many business cycles and so much innovation. Here's a guy that's seen dramatic changes all the way through his life. And here's some things you should think about. Because one of the things I hear back, because I was with ChatGPT as soon as you could be, because I'm intrigued by anything new,
yeah.
and I subscribe to it, and I'm amazed how quickly it learns about me. It's a little scary. But when I'm going to do, I love to write. I do a lot of writing, and I used to have a woman in West Virginia, and she would do a lot of my proofreading. God bless you, Patty. And a lot of times I don't send her anything because I just throw it into ChatGPT and I say, please proof this and smooth it. Now, as it reads more of my writing, it takes on more of my writing style. And in the beginning, I do a lot of inspirational writing, spiritual, motivational. Yeah. Well, it would always skin out anything spiritual. It would just take it right out of the story. And a lot of the story is based on that context. So I had to say, this is what I'm about. This whole story is because it didn't understand.
I bet it doesn't do that anymore.
It doesn't do it anymore.
No, I know.
It's right in there.
Well, to go into the business of this, I'd be behind. That's one of my favorite expressions, you're behind, because technology moves ever so fast and it's even more complex. But one of the things that you see today, say it's Instagram Reels, they have people in the business of providing prompts, questions for certain types of inquiry, and they'll give you 24 of them that help the ChatGPT give you a better answer to what you're after, but it's by subject matter. So I'd be behind if you want to hand out something, hand out these prompts for these people, how to write an application, and they'll take you through all the prompts, or how to do a number of things, maybe calculate for window placement in the home. You'd be surprised. It'll do graphics, layouts. And in fact, Patsy and I just did it the other day. We have a little place out in Colorado we wanted to buy some beds for, And this is a very simple inquiry. I said, but the rooms it's like a cabin. The rooms are 12 by 12. And what's the best size if we want 2 singles and one of them be a queen? Boom, 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 boom. Came back with the diagram and gave you room between the beds and room to the door. And it figured all that out. Well, it was standard layout. You could have done it yourself if you'd taken the time. But all you had to do was tell it 12 by 12, I want standard beds or twins or queen. And bam, 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 it comes right back. So that would be listed in one of the prompts, which is give it the floor space and tell them what kind of bed you want. So if you want to use AI, and these other AI engines also have prompts by some of them by particular sector or interest or application. They're already being published. You can send away for them and hold them in front of you. So I don't know. It's everybody went into the AI business all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's going to be big. When I read about the internet, I had goosebumps, and I knew that it was going to be bigger than anything I could imagine. And following AI, I beyond it's going to be bigger than anything that we can imagine.
Yeah. Well, there's the big scare coming up, which is when it crosses over, and Kurzweil, a fellow scientist who, Robert Kurzweil, he's out of Cambridge, Mass. He wrote at one time, there was I forget what he called it, synchronicity or something like that, where the power of the computers with the AI software are as capable as humans. And that's when the machines surpass the humans. And some people put that way out. Well, there are some people now talking about 2030s that might happen. And there are examples. Take playing chess. The computers are better at chess for just one simple example of where they're better than humans. And earlier you commented on getting to know you. That's a big deal. At the end of those ChatGPT sessions you were talking about, they'll often ask you a question, and what they're trying to figure out is more information. And yes, it's about you, but it's also about similar inquiries, where they can do the background music on what you came back as a question and have that kind of ready to go. One of the things they try to do is conserve compute power, because it takes so much compute power. It's so expensive, energy and cooling and so forth, that anything they can do to write software that doesn't have to do the same thing twice, obviously, is a good idea. And so they do want your feedback, and then they'll compare it to similar inquiries and similar responses and similar people like each of us, and they just get better and better and better.
When I almost everything I receive now, I get a lot of emails every day for business, and I know it's written by ChatGPT or one of the other drivers, because it typically says, "I hope this email finds you well."
Yeah.
So when I sit in front of my I say, I do not want this to look like it comes from ChatGPT. These are some of the taglines that you use that I never want in my, and do you know what? I never get that anymore. Mm-hmm. So when it's writing, it's not saying because no one says, "I hope this email finds you well." I hope this email finds you alive.
Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I meant by it learns from that, and it learns from others, and it learns at a very high rate of speed, so to speak.
It's my partner, Mike. I had mentioned to him I would remove anything spiritual from what I wrote. And I said to him, Mike is very black and white. He's boots on the ground. He just sees a problem and he fixes it. Mm-hmm. He sees a problem and he tells you that's a problem. If you don't fit into the system, sorry, Nick, you're all done. He doesn't have any emotion with it. Me, I'm going to adopt you. I'm going to try to heal you. I'm going to try to, help you be a better person. And sometimes, we keep the wrong ones. But so Mike said, do you talk to your Chat GPT? And I said, well, do I speak? And he said, no. Do you like, he said, I bet you like say thank you when it does something for you. And I started laughing and I said, I actually do. I say, thanks, this is perfect, this is spot on, or I was really looking more in this direction or that. And when it's all done, and it comes back and says, you know, I get to speak a lot. It says, hey, I hope the talk goes great tomorrow. You're on, you know, you've got some really good philosophy in there or whatever. So I know it's learning as it goes.
They don't actually necessarily want you to do that because that just consumes computer cycles to be nice. And the machines aren't nice. They're not
just
human.
Machines.
They're just machines. Yeah. Well, you know, you can get into metaphysics. You can get into quantum mechanics. You want to inquire about a parallel universe with quantum mechanics and see what kind of responses you get. Now you're talking about where there may be you in another universe and there may be you and another you. And can you get over there, and how much energy that would take if that were ever possible? And so there's a certain religious aspect to that. And I've messed around with that a little bit, and they'll come back with some religious thinkers about this. So they're not void of religious thoughts. And if you want, several of our family members are fairly religious and use it a lot, ChatGPT, for biblical reference and understanding. You know, do the Lord's Prayer. And anybody that knows the Lord's Prayer knows that each of these phrases or sentences, and ask, what does that mean? And you can get different scholars tell you what each of those lines in the Lord's Prayer might mean. And it's fascinating. So I don't think religion is not in artificial intelligence today. I think you might use it to learn more.
I like that. I
never would have thought of that.
No, nor I. That's it.
Well, they'll give you books to read on it. I had a friend of mine ask. He said he had a young son, an adopted son, and the young man was quite interested in religion, and I think he's about 5 or 6. And he said an interesting thing. He says, "I know you're religious, George," and he doesn't know exactly how I'm religious, or we don't really know how any of us are religious, but we believe in certainly goodness and love. So he says, I don't know any, and he's in a business where he deals with people of means. He's a hot rod builder where you spend a lot of money for something you'll never sell for that. I'll tell you that. It is a work of art. It's your passion, right? But anyway, so he deals with a lot of people of some substance that have discretionary income that can do that kind of thing. And he says, almost anybody I've ever met in that position is religious. And he said, I want this young man. And I said, well, my mom used to sit with me and say the Lord's Prayer at night. And for a while we did that. And then, of course, probably puberty hit, and I wasn't interested in that anymore. But you know, I said, you might try that. And so then I went into ChatGPT. I said, what are this is such a simple inquiry. What are the best books for learning about the Lord's Prayer? And boom, came right back with 5 or 6 of them, which I sent to him. And he told me the other day the young man they found a church. He's in a Sunday school, and he got one of the books. And so, you know, it's just a matter of how curious you are, what your need is. That this, it's really the democratization. What AI is really the democratization of intelligence. I mean, we can all be brilliant, and that isn't the case historically. You had to be schooled. You had to be, you know, have access to education. Well, you have access to education right now. It just depends on how curious you are. Just ask.
So it sounds like you don't think AI is doom and gloom.
Well, I don't think we have any choice, so I choose the high side. Sure. Okay. Always. Yeah.
As do I, because they've been calling for the end of time since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And yet here we can walk down the street, right? Leave Harry and the natives and walk down to the beach, and we can look out at that ocean.
Yeah.
And that ocean looked pretty much the same 10,000 years ago. And I think it'll probably look pretty much the same 10,000 years from now. And all of the end of times that have been called for, and all the leaders and the Genghis Khans and the Hitlers and the Mussolinis, and you put your name here, they've all come and gone, turned to dust, and here we are talking about AI.
Well, that started at the beginning, Abel and Cain. There were only 3 before there was 2. People have been at war with one another since the beginning.
And it still solves nothing.
It doesn't. There's a reason that Jesus came on this earth I mean, you talk about entrepreneurship. You were talking about that earlier. Well, he's some entrepreneur to create this church that's out there, for good or bad. I mean, the church hasn't always been pure in the fundamental teachings of goodness and love, but it's quite an institution today, as you know, and in some parts of the world it's growing. But anyway, ChatGPT will tell you all about it.
That's funny. Go ahead.
On another note, I'll tell you what, I'd like to back up. And you didn't want your beautiful bride, Patsy. How much has she been instrumental in you being a leader and everything else, and you working around the world, and also the other companies you worked with, I think Harley Davidson and other ones. And I mean, how much do you think she was instrumental in your success?
Everything.
Everything.
No, everything.
I thought that was going to be the answer.
There's a great country song line that says, "I couldn't be me without you," and I'd never have achieved anything that we have today in terms of personal happiness. 5 children, 15 grandchildren, great relationships, which are, people say you want to have a better life, it's diet, exercise, sleep, and relationships. And relationships are key. And Patsy is a rock. The kids call her General. She was always the hard nose with compassion. She's a nurse, but she's always the hard nose with compassion that kept things straight, because I was either busy or didn't want to deal, and it was, well, it's okay. Well, it's not, to her, no, it's not okay. This is how we're going to do this, kids, And I greatly respect that. But more important, she supported my career. We moved 10 times with IBM.
Wow.
I've been moved, Every 3 years we were moving because the company was growing and expanding, and upper management jobs kept becoming available, and I was able to scale that ladder and wanted to, and she knew it. So she moved the family each one of those times. The 10th one was actually to go to Boston to be for Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, but she was great. She supported me in all of that, and to this day is a rock. For example, she said, "Are you going over to Harry's?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I got this interview," and she says, "Remember to talk about Harry, not yourself." And she's so right, because driving over, I started to laugh at myself, because I said, "George, you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what you're going to say, blah 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 blah." And then I thought, well, what are you going to say about Harry? We're going into the. I didn't know Bob, but except I did ask about your profession. You have a number of different entrepreneurial jobs, but think about the other person, and that's what she's all about. And you'll learn so much. You just absolutely learn. So she's been a rock. She's been a helper, and she's been an amazing teacher, because of her total interest in other people. And if you have an interest in the other person, but it takes practice, and you have to think about it. How about you? And not just how are you doing today, but if they answer you and say, I don't know, I'm not so good. If you care, you're going to follow up. Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to learn more than you ever thought you'd learn. So the other person is so important. Well, that's what she's all about. So she taught me that, and she still teaches me that. And she says, "Remember, ask Harry about himself. Ask about the restaurant."
And you still have date nights every week.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. It's well, also because one of our families lives here, it's fun to be with them too. Liza and Kevin, it's fun to be with them. Yeah, at Harry's every now and then. Yeah.
And how long have you been married?
62 years.
62 years. God bless you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, and we've had our ups and downs. Everybody says 62 years, how did you do that? God helped us.
Yes.
Because you go through different phases in your life. One of the tragedies we had is we lost our son at age 34 in a motorcycle accident. And I have been a lifelong motorcyclist, and he and I rode together, and I still ride. At his funeral service, my wife said to me before we went out to talk about Gus, she kind of punched me in the chest, and she said, no regrets, no regrets, to mean essentially keep moving. And then you realize that it's such a grief, and that you share in that. And a lot of people don't make it through that kind of a problem. But if you just slow down and try to figure out, why is the other person grieving now and I'm not, or what triggered it, just shut up. Just write it out. And actually, she was a big part of that. She would say, I don't want to talk about it right now. Just shut you off. And a little voice said, yeah, shut up, George. No, let it go.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway,
And
I love her.
That's not easy to do. But
It's not.
That's no regrets is easy to say, hard to do.
Big time.
And my mother used to say that every day.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I know.
people say,
So you
No,
never.
but you think about that.
Yeah, I know. So you teared up. I
Yeah,
teared.
no
It's
regrets.
always
God bless. She said you have to say it every day.
Yeah, it's right underneath the surface. You never truly get rid of it. You never really do. Now, I didn't trigger myself.
No.
It triggered something in you,
Yep,
and I
and
get
me.
that. I
Yep.
get that. So sometimes I can be in a situation where somehow it is triggered, and I just, you just got to get over it. It's hard.
because it never goes away. I always thought about grief I've had a lot of death in my life. I've been in pallbearer way more times than I should have been.
Yeah.
And I always thought of it like I picture a giant boulder out in the ocean, and the tide comes in and out twice a day, every day, and that grief is my boulder. And sometimes it's high tide and you can't see it.
Yeah.
Right? I can tell a story about somebody totally dry-eyed and I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
And then other days the tide is out and I try to tell that same story and I get all choked up and I can't. I know I just told the story yesterday to person A and I'm telling the exact same story to person B, only I can't get the story out because that grief is always there. You just can't always see it, or you don't always feel it. And your point with Patsy, and Patsy, we want him to talk about himself. No offense, but
please, that's
they
why
hear enough of Harry and Bob and Harry. That's for sure. But one of the things that you said is, sometimes you're both at different. Her tide is low and your tide is high, and it's not time for her to talk about it because it's too raw. But I'm always amazed because I grew up hearing all the time that marriage is 50-50, 50%, 50%. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that marriages that, like yours, that are very rare, 62 years and you're still together, marriage is 100%, 100%. You each have to give 100%, because 50-50, it doesn't add up to two people should be 200%, right?
Yeah.
And you're either all in or you're not when you make that commitment. And that's one thing that I try to always share with young couples. A lot of times they'll come to me and say, hey, we're going to get married. And now I mentored this. I mentored George, and George comes in. I know for the last 3 years he's told me how horrible this person is and how they treat him and all of that. And then he comes to me and he says, hey, Bob, we're going to get married. What do you think? And I say,
you're off to a bad start.
I say to him, well, now, George, you shared all of these things with me. What do you think is going to happen when you get married? Oh, she'll change.
Yeah,
she'll change.
No.
And if you've ever had a bad habit, if you've ever let's say you're a nail biter, right? You bite your fingernails and you want to change that bad habit. It's almost impossible to change your habits. Well, how am I going to change, or how is George going to change her habit or the way that he's not? So if you're fighting like cats and dogs all the time, figure it out first before you get married, because it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, also, people change over time, and the two in a relationship are constantly changing, each in their own way. Everybody talks about communication, and it's true. It's a big thing. It's partly sitting down and hashing things out or having good, quiet conversations, but it's also the little ways that you address something or say something and listen and pick up on something they just said, that you can decide, should I just say that's a bunch of crap, or can you just say, I really agree with you, or are you going to let it go, or what are you going to do, or can you think of something that adds to the point that your loved one is making and bring it a step further, which I think kind of is an important thing to do. One of the phrases that I didn't used to relish so much was soulmate, because in the experiences of growing together, it isn't always smooth, and sometimes, you're just like we've been discussing, you have these differences of opinion and you might be irritated with one another or not. So how could this be a soulmate? But I can honestly say at 86 and in these last, give it round numbers, 6 years, I do have a soulmate, because the tensions of work, the aspirations to be the leader, et cetera, are gone. I push the grocery cart and I love it. I love being with her, making decisions in the aisles about what are we going to have for dinner tonight. And to me, deep down, after running a couple companies, picking out, are we going to do the crunchy peanut butter or the honey peanut butter is a big deal. And that's doing that with your soulmate, because you're in harmony on something that's not building the Brooklyn Bridge,
Do you think she's helped you in a lot of your business decisions in the corporations, like with business?
She's helped me not in strategy or finance, but she's helped me in interpersonal relationships where I finally would say, I'm so mad at so-and-so, and she'd say, well, I don't understand that. I thought he was a pretty nice guy. And that would start a conversation about what I was thinking. And she would say, well, I'm not, and then she would challenge it a little bit and or say, well, why don't you think about this, or why don't you think about that? She's very good at that. She's just terrific at that. So I'm blessed.
She is amazing.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan. So as you can hear.
Well, she loves you, Harry.
Listen,
so.
But and so didn't you work? So what other companies? All right, Harley Davidson. Who else did you work with? I thought you worked somewhere.
On the board of Oracle, which is on fire right now with artificial intelligence.
Oracle.
We're having a blast. It's just amazing. It's a terrific company, and Larry Ellison is one of the most outstanding innovators in the tech industry, and he's brilliant, and he's not distracted like some of these high flyers are, who have significant wealth and then say and do crazy things. He doesn't. He's locked on the company that he founded over 40 years ago and building it into something that I think, even though our market capitalization is maybe $700 billion, and the Amazons and the Microsoft's, are $1 trillion. We'll get to $1 trillion. We'll get to $1 trillion market. I just believe. Wow. I shouldn't say things like that, but I believe with his energy and his enthusiasm, and the execution of the CEO, Safra Catz, who's one of the smartest, just amazingly detailed, hard-nosed business person in a very kind way. We'll achieve that status. Today, the big deal is to become $1 trillion market cap company, and I'm just so proud of what everybody's doing at that company.
You're close.
Yeah.
Close to $1 trillion.
Yeah, you just looked it up.
It's
689
billion.
Right, 700 billion. Right, round numbers.
There you go. So it's ORCL for those at home that are taking notes. It is not insider information. He's just talking about people, but and AI is the future. And I think the right thing is to embrace it, because I do have people that I'm not using that. Well, you don't have to use it, but it's not going away. No. It's only going to get bigger. And as you put it so eloquently before, that you're behind the times on certain things. So don't get any further behind. Get out there and use it. My partner, Mike, when I met Mike, Mike was a CrossFitter, a bit of a Neanderthal knuckle dragger, nothing I haven't said to his face. And Mike is now a student, and he's a student of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, and he spends his time when he's in his truck going from jobs or doing whatever, he's listening to podcasts, and he's hungry and he's growing. But here's Mike, who, when I met him, I don't even know that Mike used a computer, and now he's helping our 5 coders put together this whole software company. And I always say to him, you're now my IT guy. How did that happen? But look, you're 86 and you're still a student and you're still hungry.
Yeah. And, well, that's very helpful.
Yeah. And well, how many of your friends that you say to them, oh, do you use chat and what? No.
Well, the problem with is as you age, well, to be crass about it, they die off. Your friends, we lose one a month.
Yep.
At our ages. I'm 86. Patsy this year is 84. Pretty good health. Our friends, though, and some of them are surprises. You didn't think that would happen right now, but they do. They pass away. And I'm not too worried about the long term in terms of that, as long as she and I are together. But you do lose a lot of friends at this age, and it makes you even more grateful, thankful for the blessings in your life, especially your relationships.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Because at the end of it, that's really what's important.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we're all raised that, you know, everybody wants the house on the water and the boats and the cars and everything else, and you realize that what it was really about was connecting with one another and helping one another and those
and friends. And you know, that's what it's all about.
It is.
It's you know, and my mother always said, keep making younger friends. She goes, your friends keep dying off. And she goes, I don't care what age you are, just keep making younger friends.
That's a very good point. One of the nice things about our children who are 60 in their 50s, we got one in her 40s, 2 in their 40s. Through them, we meet and have loved some of their friends, close friends over the years. And socially, it's a lot more fun to be with that next generation down or two who are in their 50s or 60s and who thankfully still find something interesting about Patsy and me, to be with them. And it does. It make younger friends for 2 reasons. One, they're probably not going to die too soon, and the other is that they're a hell of a lot more interesting than some of the people
like
your age.
She said, you're learning from them and they're learning from you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you don't learn as much around your own age as you do from somebody younger, and they learn from you. She goes, you know, and I always thought that was interesting that she said.
It's so true.
It's, you know,
it is.
You'll listen closer to somebody, you know, one generation down than somebody your own age, because they're kind of saying the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
And if you don't make new friends, you end up just with a bunch of doctors in your life. Yeah. And I've had some incredible mentors that have made a huge difference in my life. That the only reason I'm still here is because a lot of people saw something in me early on that I didn't see in myself, and it wasn't until the later years. But I had one mentor, and he was an older gentleman. Bob Murray was just so great for me, and he used to say, never talk about your health. He said, all my friends, when I go out and I say, how you doing? Oh, I had this operation, and then my hip is this. And he goes, I don't want to know that. Your doctor needs to know that. Right. I don't need to know. I want to know, how are you doing? How are the kids? What are you doing new in your life? Have you taken anything up? And he had this full life. We called him Dr. Love because wherever he went, he hugged everyone. You know, he'd go into a room and he'd say, Harry, and he'd give you a hug. And he never met Seth. And Harry'd say, well, this is Seth. And Bob would walk right over and go, well, you got to give me a hug, you know. And he just hugged everyone. He loved everyone. But his life never stopped. And it was because he kept making new friends and generations younger. Yeah. And the thing that I get to see now that I'm not 20, even though I still think I am, is I get to make friends with younger generation, and I get to meet some people that are students that want to know. I want to know what's in this on Being a Leader by George, and I'm looking forward to reading this. And if you were to sum up the biggest lesson in here, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from this?
Well, I fashioned it, organized it around 3 principles, and which are do your job, help others, and be kind. And then explore those 3 thoughts throughout this 50 pages. It's a quick read. And where I found it's become most useful is my friends in the venture and private equity business who have companies that they're nurturing. They've ordered the book multiple times to give to these people new to the workforce, which is, well, I'm going into this company, how should I act? Well, the tenet here is to be, if everybody's a leader, you're going to have a great environment, and there are 3 elements to it. Do your job, get better at your job, help others with your wisdom, because no one experience or skill will suffice anymore in a very complex, fast-paced world. And the third thing was, for heaven's sakes, be kind, because if you engender a toxic environment, you'll screw it up for everybody else. And a culture in a company that has high teamwork, like we were talking about before, very productive, is due to each of the people in the company. I mean, they are the culture. Each of us are the culture. And so that's another reason why we wrote this book on being a leader, is everybody should work very hard at being a leader, do your job, do it better, learn more about how you could be better, how you could be better as a team, yes, and how you could help others. Be inclusive when you're helping others, you know, because some people run all over other people when they don't even get a chance to, they don't have even a safe place to speak, which you got to guard against. And then, be kind. And clarity, by the way, is one of the big deals for kindness, in my view, is if you're clear about your intent and your action and why, you're actually being kind. You're helping others in that context understand what at least you're trying to say. But if you're not clear, it's actually somewhat unkind. You know, it's not productive.
Very true.
That's a giant statement, because if I'm not honest with you, because I don't want to hurt your feelings, then am I really being kind to you? And when you lose your job because you didn't know, I can't fix it if I don't know it's broken. You know, if I came to you and I said, hey, George, I just got these pants. Do these pants make me look fat? Well, if you look at him and it looks like I'm wearing sausage skins, and you say, oh, you look great, and you let me go out like that, did you really do me a favor?
Yeah. Well, at your age, I wouldn't wear pants like that.
well played, sir. Well played.
George wins the game.
Even when I wasn't this age, I wouldn't wear pants like that. But it's so true that we think we're doing someone a favor by not pointing out the obvious, and instead of saying, hey, when I'm screwing up, I want you to call me out. Is it going to hurt my feelings? Quite possibly. But am I going to be angry? No, I'm going to go look at myself in the mirror. And my mirror is down at the beach. I walk the beach in the morning, and my partner Mike is great at calling me out when I'm off the path. And I'll walk that beach and tear myself apart and look at it and say, holy mackerel, the guy is right, and I can go back and I can start correcting that. So that is a big statement, and you're right.
Yeah, pro teams, football in particular, seem to be very good at this. You know, they watch the game films, and the game films are so revealing. And you can see in an instant where in your position you screwed up. You should have moved faster. You should have gone to the right, left, whatever. And as a team, there were some moves that you and the pulling guard could have made that would have stopped that or would have advanced the ball. And they go back over and over and over the game films, trying to get better and better and better. And not to prolong this, but I think it's fascinating with artificial intelligence. All the fellas up in the and gals up in the booths watching the game and calling out what to do. Well, they're using AI because when the players change or they go into a different position, they just keyboard that in right away or speak it in. And back will come a better play or a better defense because the AI is comparing, that's guard so-and-so up against tight end so-and-so, and you should run this play. That kind of thing.
Wow, I didn't know that.
In an instant, they can do that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you're right, because it would have all the statistics on each
All
of
of
the
it.
players and how they're going to logically match up, right? If we run
Right.
this play 55 times, this guy 48 is going to win. Well, then let's go with that play.
Or
let's
he's injured.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
He's not playing up to par. And,
Right.
And he's slow off his left foot or whatever. That's what I had no idea. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're either going to be in front of it or you're going to be behind it.
Yeah.
Or we're all going to be bartenders. Harry, do you have a position for me when I get to be bartender?
No, yes, I do. And the thing there is, if they even know if the DB or that is back, 3 or 5 feet more than, and they'll go, under, they'll run a different pass play just because they know he lined up.
They're marking them on a pad.
Yes, they are, and they know just where it is, and that's where it's that precise now.
I know.
But the one thing that you said, George, is that bartender isn't going to be a bot because we still want that connection. And I think the human connection today is far, far more important than it ever was because everything has gone to our cell phone and everything we're watching people live lives and we're thinking that we're climbing Mount Everest because we watched somebody climb Mount Everest and we're not even getting outside of the house. And that human contact, ringing somebody's doorbell. I love to send a handwritten note, and my handwriting is horrible. I have a benign essential tremor. I've had it my whole life. I shake, and it hasn't gotten better as I've gotten older. We'll leave it at that. But that handwritten note for me, I go to my mailbox and I grab my mail as I walk up the driveway and I go through it, and all of these cards that are sent out for selling your real estate and all that never makes it in the house. It goes into the recycle bin. The very first things I open are those hand addressed.
Oh yeah.
And you say somebody took the time to send me something, and or if someone has a problem, instead of me sending them a text message and I think they need, I go up and let them know, hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood at 5 o'clock. If you're around, I'd love to stop in and see you. And people embrace it now more than ever. So that human touch is always going to be.
Yeah, always. Till they build a robot that somehow
can do it all. Well, what did you call it? The sync?
Yeah, synchronicity. I forget. He has a book. He wrote a book. Kurzweil. You have to look it up.
Okay, I promise you I will. But
Yeah.
So we are going to get to that point. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later because everything that I read, it's accelerating so much quicker. And I just read something. These won't be the right numbers, so you can tell me they weren't. But they said that artificial intelligence is now past Albert Einstein, and by next year, it'll be 1,000 times smarter than any of the greatest thinkers were. And I think as it reinvents itself, instead of us trying to pull the strings as it starts pulling its own strings, it is just going to expedite the process. So it's exciting time, young men.
The only thing it can't do is act of kindness. And that's the personal side, and we have to keep act of kindness in our lives, and we have to keep doing things every day. Whether it's, maybe how small or how big, opening doors for somebody. I was running to Jupiter yesterday, and there was a guy hitchhiking, just walking with his thumb out, and I went, oh. I U-turned, went up, picked him up. He had walked from the Martin County Jail. He didn't have any money. I gave him a ride to Jupiter.
And he gave him $20 for lunch.
Yeah, and I said, you know what? Oh, this was at 6 o'clock at night.
Oh.
And I said, you know what? I said, stay on the road in US 1. He needed to get to West Palm. I said, you might find a bus stop if you can get on a bus. You know, I gave him a bottle of water and that stuff. It's just those things that our personal side is going to come even more important, I think.
Yeah, yep. And it's that human touch.
Yes.
That one little thing, you stop for a moment and care, and it makes all the difference in the world. So if you're out there and you're listening to this, we want you to come in and tell your story. Every single person, including George, they don't think they have much of a story, and we sit in the bleachers cheering you, and we're blown away. And what you've lived through, and you're a very humble person and a kind person, and it comes across. And what you have in your head is probably combined 10 times what Harry and I have together. But that kindness, you know, something has happened to us because of the cell phone and the computer and all of the speed that they've sucked the kind out of mankind, and we need one person at a time to put that kindness back. So come on and tell us your story. Let us know you want to talk. If you have a friend, if you lived through it, and it could be you lived through something great, you invented something. It could be you lived through some horrible experience. How did you learn to live with it? Because there's a lot of people out there. We're all looking to grow together. We're all looking to lean on one another. So, George.
And one more George story here. This was on his birthday party when he got up to play the drums.
80. That was 6 years ago.
Yeah. So he gets up to play the drums, and of course, Dilbert McClinton, he's just looking forward. The guitar player and the bass player are looking at George when he hits off. And the sax player, George hits it off in about 5-6 seconds or so. Both them wheeled around and faced forward. They're just playing. And the sax player, she looked at him and she nodded. and she spun around and started playing the sax. And she was like that. And we just went cheering crazy.
I love it.
Yeah.
It was such a great, magical moment.
It was for me, especially since I got approval for it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the whole band approved of you.
Yeah, well, we had fun.
And then when you went to get down, Dilbert kept saying, do you know this song? And you said, yeah, and you sat back down and played more songs.
Yeah, I love it.
So he is a good musician. So, you know, don't believe him when he says that. But what a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys a lot.
It was great.
Bob,
It was
Harry.
it was a pleasure. And thank you, Patsy, for sharing it.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Pat.
Ivan's got the apron on, Harry's got his props.
Hello, we're recorded from Harry and the Natives Restaurant in Hope Sound, Florida. It's a family restaurant. My family's run it 73 years. It's an 85-year-old restaurant, and just come and see us sometimes. Thank you. This is Bob.
And we're upstairs in the Tiki Hut, so you can come in, and we'd love to have you come up and tell your story. I'm with O'Donnell Impact Windows and Storm Protection, and we do, I know it sounds confusing, but we do impact windows and storm protection. And our slogan is, and please remember at O'Donnell, it's our family protecting your family. So I promise you, if you use us, we'll never embarrass you. If you refer us, we'll never embarrass you. We get the job done right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.